Be talking about brep.io. brep.io is a project for building 3D models in the browser. It uses meshes for handling the actual Boolean operations, and it generates the geometry in a way that the names and IDs of the faces and edges are stable. Um, It is a history-based 3D modeler, so that's very similar to how SolidWorks and Fusion 360 and Siemens NX or CATIA, any of those kind of standard modeling systems, they all employ feature histories. So that's something that we use with brep.io. To get started with brep.io, you can clone the repo and then run these commands to set up a local dev server. You can also produce a static build by running these commands. You should be able to install this, or you should be able to build and upload this to pretty much any CDN. Or you can simply use the brep.io domain, which is available, and you can use the modeler from the hosted version that we have available. To get started, I'm going to open up and start a new model. So I'm just going to go here and hit new. And we'll go over some of how brep.io operates. Over here, we have the history. There's no features in the history yet, so we have to add one. That's what this little plus button's for. So if we hit the plus, we can see the list of features that are available. In this particular case, I'm going to start off and just throw in a primitive cube real quick. You can see the primitive cube here, and if I hit this little fit button, this is going to zoom to fit. The cube here, we can adjust the parameters on it, and you'll notice that you can just go and change the numbers and increment the values for it. We also have the transform controls, which can be activated by selecting the button over here. And in the 3D model, it actually show you this little transform controls. You can go and click and drag the balls in order to rotate it, or you can click and drag the arrowheads to go and move things around. I'm just going to reset this back to its original position so that it's not moved. But basically, you can move around any of the primitives like that. I'm going to go and add another primitive in here. In this particular case, I'm going to go and do a cone. And you can see that it just went and tossed in a cone. Again, we can adjust the parameters on this. So if I wanted to make the cone shorter, if I wanted to go and adjust the radius on one end, I can. And I could do the same on the other end. And again, I could go and position this thing however I want. Go and move it around. So there we are. We've moved it around. We've got it so that it's interfering with that cube. And then we could do other things with it, such as Boolean operations. So each feature, if it's generating geometry, a lot of times it'll have this Boolean option on it. So if we change that to something like union, and then we click here, this will allow us to select the item in the scene that we want to Boolean it with. So if I do that, there we are. It's gone and it's unioned with the cube. And if I turn on the wireframe mode, you can see the geometry on the inside is gone. If I change this from union to subtract, you can see that it's gone and subtracted our solid from the other solid. And if I turn this back on, we can turn that back on and we can see. Now again, I could still go and continue to change these parameters and adjust the values on it. I can change the height if I want to. And I could do a whole bunch of variety of different actions on it. Now we also support the sphere feature, So this will give us a sphere. There's another primitive that we support, the torus, which is basically a revolved circle. And then we also have the pyramid primitive. So the pyramid primitive has the ability to have a number of different sides. So we can change how many sides it has. We can also go and change the height on that and the side length. And again, because this is just like any of the other primitives, we can go and adjust its location and move it around as we see fit. Let's go and explore the sketch feature real quick. In order to create a sketch feature, you can simply come over here and hit the plus. In this particular case, before I go and create my sketch, I'm going to add a datum just so that we can have some planes to use, and I can reorient the sketch after I'm done. I'll come over here and I'll hit the plus again so that I can add a sketch feature. Now, the sketch feature has an input that allows you to select a particular plane. So, for example, if I select the sketch plane thing, I can come over here and I can select a plane. I could also choose to use an existing face. So if I had a model which had a flat face on it, I could select that face as to where the sketch is going to be located. In this particular case, I'm going to go and select this plane right there. Now, to actually go in and edit the sketch, I have to use the Edit Sketch button, which is inside the feature itself. And now I can start drawing things. Now, this toolbar up here, this allows you to change what mode you're in. So right now, I'm in the select mode, but I can go over here and I can put it into line mode, and that will allow me to draw lines. And it'll keep on drawing lines until I change the mode back over to something else. I'm going to go and finish this up real quick. So I'm going to go and add a line from here to here. And now I have a shape that's a closed loop. Now I can drag this thing around freely. I can drag the points. I can move them around. Uh, but when you're doing sketches, you really want to go and be able to establish relationships between different pieces of geometry. So, for example, if I wanted these two lines to be parallel with each other, I would come over here and select the parallel constraint. Now, the way that I got this toolbar to pop up is by selecting different objects. It'll show you things that you could do with those objects. So if I click away, now I don't have anything selected. In order to get that toolbar back, if I select the objects that I want to use the constraint or apply a constraint to, I can see the applicable constraints that I could possibly apply to them. In this particular case, I'm going to hit the parallel constraint. So now those two lines will always be parallel with each other. Now, if I wanted to go and make this line, let's just say I want to make this line vertical, I could come over here and apply the vertical constraint. If I wanted to make this line horizontal, I could apply the horizontal constraint there. And notice how this other line is staying parallel to this one. So that's one of the kind of nifty things that you can do with the constraint solver, is that you build these relationships between different things, and it'll basically follow the rules and maintain those relationships as you adjust the geometry. Now, this point right here, which has the little fixed symbol on it, that is going to allow us to constrain this thing to the center point of the sketch. So if I wanted to take and constrain this point here to the center point, I could select both points, and I can use the coincident constraint. So now those 2 points are locked together. So now we have this. I can adjust this, but I'm not able to go and move that point anymore because it's constrained to a point that is fixed. Something else I can do is if I wanted to select this line right here, I can apply a distance constraint. Now, a distance constraint, this is going to allow us to dimension that value for that line. And if I double click on it, I can change the value. So maybe I want to set that to 10. And there we are. Now that's set to 10. So that's basically all locked down. If I double click on that again, maybe I want to change the value. I could change it back down to something like 5. And this makes it pretty easy to go through and actually design your object and kind of establish what the dimensions and the rules are for it. Something else I can do is if I wanted to have, say, an angle between two lines. If I select the two lines, I can come over here to the angle symbol and click that. And now it has given us the angle dimension. And of course, I can adjust the location of it. In this particular case, I don't like where this is at. So if I select it, I can do toggling between different locations for it to be drawn. Until I get to the one that I want. So I think that one's going to be the one I want. And I'm going to want to set this to something like maybe 130 degrees. Now, if I don't like that dimension, maybe I can change this to 110. I can always just go back in there, double click on it to make some modifications. Now, I can still drag this thing around, but notice how that angle between these two lines always stays the same. Now, there's only one more dimension that I would need to actually completely lock this thing down. So if I select this line right here and do a distance on it, I can set that line length. But I can also do some other stuff. If I go and I delete that, I can, for example, set the length of this line as being equal to the length of this other line. So if I select this line and I select that line, I could do an equal. And those two lines will always stay equal to each other in length. So if I go and I change this, let's say I change that to 8, you'll notice that both of those lines updated. So now I'm going to go and finish my sketch. And you'll notice how we now have a face that we can use for developing some geometry. In the next section, I'm going to go over doing an extrude and a revolve. Okay, so we're going to go and do the extrude functionality and kind of show off how the extrude functionality works. To start off and do an extrude, you need to have an existing face or a sketch like this that we have cooking there, and we can go and do the extrude feature. The extrude feature is going to have us select a profile. So in this particular case, that's going to be our sketch face here. And it's going to extrude it out and make it into a three-dimensional object. Now I can adjust the values on that to change how far it's going to extrude. I can also extrude back. So I can extrude in both directions, and I can set how much in each direction. So that basically allows us to make two-dimensional geometry into three-dimensional geometry. Now, if I wanted to go and do something here, like make a revolve, the revolve function basically allows us to select a axis and a face, and it will revolve about that face. For us to do that right now, I'm going to actually go and draw a new sketch real quick. And in this particular case, I am going to select a face on my model that I want to sketch on. So when I do this, I'm going to select the sketch plane. And then over here, I'm going to change this to face. and it's going to allow me to select a face on my model. Now that we've selected that face right there, if I go into Edit Sketch, I can go and draw something. So I am going to go and just draw a shape right there. And I'm also going to go and draw a line just kind of off in space here, which is going to be used as the center line for this revolve. As soon as I hit finish, now here we are. We have the line, we have the face that we're going to revolve, and I can go and do a revolve feature. So right here, it's going to have us select the profile that we want to use. In this particular case, I'm going to select this. Now, for the axis, I'm going to select this line right here. And you'll notice that it went and it drew an object and it revolved about that line. I can also use other things rather than that line there as the axis. So if I go back in here, I could select that, and then I can pick a different axis that I want to revolve about. So if I wanted to revolve about that axis, I can revolve there. Or maybe if I wanted to revolve about this axis, I could revolve about that. Okay, so now that we have that, something else that we can do is we can use the Boolean operation here. A lot of the features have this. And if I wanted to go and maybe subtract this from this other piece, I could do a subtract, and then I can select the piece I want to subtract it from. And you'll notice how it went and it cut a hole right through there. Now, one of the nice things about having that feature history is now that I can go back in time and I can change things. So if I wanted to go back in time and change this sketch, I can go back, I can change it, and then I can drag things around a little bit. Okay, and I can adjust it. And as soon as I hit finish and then go all the way to the end here, it's going to go and run all those features again. And you'll notice that our geometry all updated based on what the new inputs were. The next thing I'm going to show off is some of the fillet and edge operations that you can do. So if we come over here and hit the plus again, we can find the fillet feature and the chamfer feature. So the chamfer feature is the easier one of the two, and this will allow us to select edges in our model and apply a chamfer to them, where it cuts off portions of the model. Of course, you can set the size of the chamfer, and do other things. Right now, because I am on an outside corner, I'm using the inset option. But if this was a corner that was between two things, you also have the option of doing like an outside chamfer. But for now, we're doing an inside chamfer where it's cutting the edges off rather than adding material. I'm going to go and delete this feature. I could just come over here to the little X and delete it. And I'm going to show you the fillet functionality. The fillet, this is going to allow us to select edges of our model. Right now, you can also select a face if you wanted to. If you have the face selected, it's going to select all of the edges of that face. So, for example, if I selected that face right there, notice how it rounded all of the edges of that face. Now, if I wanted to go and just select individual edges, I can put this in edge mode and I can select the things I want to do it to. And you can see that it goes and it puts in our round corners there. Now, I can save my model here, and it's going to ask me for a name, so I'm going to call this example. Now, a 3D model is useful to kind of like model things on the computer, but you probably want to actually build something in real life. So right here, we have the export button. The export button allows you to export a 3MF file. You could also export a STL or a JSON version of the CAD model itself. So that's something you could import back in as CAD data. If you do it as 3MF, though, it also includes the part history. So you can share files with your friends and they can actually open them back up in brep.io, and it'll come in with the complete part history here. So I'm going to just go and do 3MF with history, and I'm going to export that. And if I open that, it's going to open up right now. I have Prusa Slicer, and we can actually see that model. Now, the beauty of that is that we can import it back in, and it will come back in with this full feature history. And you could do that with the import functionality. You can interrogate your model a little bit. So if I wanted to go and find out what the volume of this model was, for example, if I have the selection filter set to solid, I can come over here to the inspector panel and turn that on. And what the inspector panel does is it will allow us to interrogate our model a little bit and find out some information about it. So if I go and I selected this, it'll give us some information like the number of faces that it has. Um, It'll also give us some information about like how many triangles are in the mesh and what the bounding box is. But there's some other stuff in here that if we go and we look, you can see that we have the volume. It also gives us the surface area, which is all very useful things to be able to know. Now, if I wanted to go and find out some information about, say, maybe just a single face, I can change my selection filter to face, and then I can select one of these faces here. And if I scroll down here, we can go and find out some information about this. Let me just go and kind of close up some of these little sections here. Yeah, so this will show us like the surface area. If I wanted to go and select like maybe an edge itself, if I go and I select an edge, I can get like a length on it. So there's all sorts of kind of goodies, information that you can get out of the inspector panel. You can also see what the actual name of the item is, or if you go over here, you can expand it and look at stuff over here. I'm going to hide off the inspector panel,